Guys, welcome back. So it is BPD Relatable from TikTok. I am going to be making a video today on what BPD is and what are the 9 characteristics, how you get diagnosed, and how you seek treatment. I was going to do this on TikTok, but 60 seconds is not enough time to break everything down. BPD is a personality disorder, and I like to think of it as a one big trauma response. 71% of people that have BPD have endured trauma, and usually it stems from your childhood. Now, the other 29% have environmental or genetic factors that have led to their BPD. Out of the 71%, trauma could be essentially anything that overwhelms your ability to cope in stressful situations. It doesn't have to be anything catastrophic as some would think it would be. It doesn't have to be a death. It doesn't have to be a car accident. It doesn't have to be an earthquake. It can be something as little as just being invalidated as a child, having your emotions and your feelings minimized, being left to deal with those emotions on your own or being neglected. Don't get me wrong, the more catastrophic things like death and earthquakes and all that jazz, they are trauma, 100%, but I think a lot of people don't recognize that what they experienced was trauma. It could be any kind of physical or sexual abuse. It can be bullying. It can be having a neglectful parent that is never around or maybe passes you off to other people. Now there's environmental factors. So if you have a family member that has BPD, you are 5 times more likely to develop BPD. Let's talk about the genetic aspect of it. So if your mother or father has been through trauma, your genes get altered. And then when they go and they have a baby, they can pass that gene on to you. However, when you get that gene once you're born, it doesn't mean it's always going to express itself. So it doesn't mean that you are 100% going to have BPD. It could express itself, but most likely, more times than not, it doesn't just automatically express itself. It usually takes going through the similar childhood or an invalidating childhood or more trauma to express itself. But because you already carry that gene, it will express itself a lot faster. Before we get into the DSM-5, let's talk about the name borderline personality disorder and where it originated from. So in some parts of the country, they have changed the name. However, where I'm at in Canada, it is still borderline personality disorder. Originally, borderline personality disorder, the name was made because they thought we were on the borderline of neurosis and psychosis. Further research, they have realized that that wasn't true. However, that doesn't mean someone with BPD doesn't experience some aspects and symptoms of psychosis. I'll get into that a little bit further when we get into the DSM-5, and I'll explain that. So I'm going to read directly from the DSM-5. Wording is very vague to me. It doesn't explain why we do what we do, but we're going to get into it. So it says, BPD is a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and effects, and marked impulsivity in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. In other words, you have to meet 5 out of the 9 of the criteria that I'm going to read out to be officially diagnosed with full-on borderline personality disorder. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. This is a really, really, really big one for people with BPD. Majority of us do fear we are going to be abandoned, and we can act out in ways because we think that person is going to leave us. One of the ways I've recognized my self-sabotaging getting in the way is when I test and test and test people until they fail. And when they pass tests, I keep testing them because I'm waiting for them to fail. And when they do fail, it reinforces the, see, I knew you were going to hurt me. See, I knew you were going to leave me. I also would often find myself people-pleasing in every relationship because I felt like if I checked off every single one of their needs, wants, demands, whatever it was, why would they leave me? And things that can trigger my fear of abandonment are canceled plans or being ignored or a change in tone or facial expressions. Someone with borderline personality disorder will be overanalyzing every single thing about that relationship, that person, their demeanor, everything, to look for threats on if they're going to leave. This inevitably leaves us in a constant state of fight or flight. Our nervous system, I feel, is always, up here. Our heightened anxiety, it never really lowers because all we are doing on a day basis is overanalyzing and fearing that that person's going to leave. And we're kind of trying to think of like, what are the things that we can do to ensure this isn't going to happen? And if it is, hey, I'm going to leave first, so I'm going to self-sabotage. Second characteristic is a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating in between extremes of idealization and devaluation. So this is very, very, very commonly seen in a favorite person. Within borderline personality disorder, we tend to gravitate towards people that make us feel safe. And we will have a favorite person that we depend on for our emotional needs. Our emotions will literally depend on them. If they're having a good day, we're having a good day. If they're having a bad day, we're having a bad day. And we also tend to mirror these people because if we, bring everything to the table of who they are as a person and we mirror exactly what they like their hobbies, their likes, their dislikes, what is the reason that they would ever not want to be with us? Keep in mind though that this is something that we do subconsciously. This isn't something that we're doing and being like, oh, I'm going to mirror them so they like me. Like that is not something that runs through our head at all. So where number 2 comes in, where we, alternate between extremes of idealization and devaluation, is that when we sense any kind of fear of rejection or abandonment, we can act out on those emotions and we can start to devalue them and split on them in other terms. When we inevitably split, in that moment, we can only see them as all good or all bad. And when we see them as all good, we're so loving. They're our soulmate. They're everything to us. We're just so in love with them. We can't live our life without them. We're obsessed with them. And then when we devalue them, it's the complete opposite. We hate them. We want them out of our lives. We wish we never met them. And it's just a cycle from there. But we don't have the ability to remember the love that we had for them. All we see is the hate that we right now feel for them. So number 3 is identity disturbance. So unstable self-image or sense of self. And I commonly see that with me when I am trying to mirror someone but not realizing I'm mirroring someone. Like kind of what I was just talking about. So people in my life that I get close to, if they like race cars, I like race cars. If they like, watermelon candies, I'm on a watermelon candy kick. If they like tacos, I'm going out for tacos every single night. I become that person because I don't even know who the hell I am. Always changing who we are as people depending on who we are hanging around. And we hold multiple different personas based on the person we are beside at that time. However, within BPD, you often see people changing, their looks a lot. So they might get crazy haircuts and drastic changes to their hair color or, their style. You see that a lot within BPD, and it's because we lack that self-image. We don't honestly know who we are. And for me, I don't know who I am outside of my trauma. All I know is the girl that went through the trauma. I don't remember who I was before or who I'm supposed to be after. Number 4 is impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. So examples are, excessive spending or reckless sex or substance abuse or reckless driving, binge eating. For me personally, I've struggled with this one a lot, the excessive spending. And what happens is I get in these low moods and then I'm like, hey, let's go to the mall. And I buy all this, stupid shit that is worthless in the long run. And I end up spending so much money that I'm honestly just self-sabotaging myself because I don't end up having enough money for my own bills. The other thing I've recognized myself doing is going and spending a lot of money at a casino and just putting money in and chasing my losses. And it's hard to stop that because I think that we get a lot of dopamine and the serotonin from it, and it makes us feel good in the moment. A lot of people with BPD struggle with substance abuse as well, and they use substance abuse to kind of numb the pain. In the end, though, it's just more self-sabotage because, you're numbing the pain and eventually you're going to have to drink more and more and more to be able to numb it to the extent that you need it to be numbed. Now, if we want to talk about reckless sex, per se, a lot of people I find use this to get over people. It's like a coping mechanism that I've lost my favorite person and I need to find any kind of human connection and human love. And in the moment, that's the way they're, getting over people, is having this reckless sex and not caring in the moment. And then they're getting close to people to have the sex and they're like, you know what, I feel loved, I feel like I'm worthy of something in the moment, and then once they leave, they're like, shit, like, you know, what happened? They're feeling a lot of guilt and shame for acting out in those ways. 5 is reoccurring suicidal behaviors, gestures, threats, or self-mutilating behavior. So when it comes to suicidal behaviors, I will admit, yes, I have been there, and I've definitely said it to the people around me, and I often don't ever threaten, I guess you could say, or say it unless I have lost somebody. And I don't say it to be manipulative, and I know that it sounds very manipulative, but in the moment when I genuinely don't want to be alive anymore, it's because that is exactly how I feel, and it feels so intense that in that moment it's like I'm scared of myself. I feel like I could do it, you know? So that is a very common thing when we lose people. When we lose people, our fear of abandonment is so real that it painfully, like, it hurts physically on your body. It's just self-harming. I've been, through that as well. I used to, essentially what I would do is I'd feel so much emotional pain, and I didn't know why I couldn't get this pain to stop. And the only way I found myself able to stop was inflicting the physical pain on myself. And it becomes a cycle and an addiction to an extent, because it's the only thing I could find that calmed myself down, that took away the emotional pain. Number 6 is affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. So going in between, euphoria, irritability, anxiety lasting a few hours, and sometimes up to a few days, it says in the DSM-5. Personally, for me, it's been like a roller coaster per day. I don't usually have things happen for longer than a few hours, but some people can. So the way I like to explain this one is, essentially, we feel so many emotions, and because we're overanalyzing everything in our day, we have so many fears, we go through a roller coaster every single day. It never stays as one mood. It's basically based off of our environment and the setting we're in and the people we talk to. And, we could be completely happy, and then maybe someone's taking 2 hours to respond to us, and we're worried that, something's happened to them. The next thing you know, we're going down, the suicidal path because we think that they've left us for good. We feel our emotions, too, to a whole new level and extent. So that can leave us pretty debilitated. Number 7 is chronic feelings of emptiness. This, for me, I haven't struggled with too much. I find that I feel that way when I lose people, and I will go through 4 days of feeling empty, and then I bounce back. But I don't really feel too much emptiness, so I can't really comment on that too much. But I do know that within BPD comes low moods like depression. I also, though, can feel chronic feelings of emptiness following episodes. So if I've had a rage episode, or if I've acted out in ways that I'm very guilty and very ashamed of and very embarrassed about, I will feel so empty and worthless, and I will just want to isolate. So I definitely have felt chronic feelings of emptiness to that extent, but it's usually when it brings on dissociation or, isolation. Number 8 is inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. So I have struggled with rage episodes. That's actually what led me to get my diagnosis, because back in 2017, I could not handle my anger. And I could go on and on and on about rage and how it's made me feel and how it's been really hard to control. And essentially the way I like to explain this is emotional dysregulation. We have a trigger that is triggering us in the moment, and we want to instantly act on that trigger. Essentially what happens within emotional dysregulation is that we become so overwhelmed with our emotions when it comes to, our triggers or something that's happened in our environment in that current moment, and we are left unable to communicate or cope appropriately, so we can lash out in anger. I would see rage, it wasn't like, oh my god, Mick, you're gonna rage and this is what we're gonna do because I want to do that. And that's not how it goes for a borderline. I can reassure you that is not at all how it happens. So usually what happens is we feel the trigger, we feel ourselves escalating, and we're trying to control that by feeling understood by the people around us, hey, I'm feeling triggered, but we're not able to say that in the moment. But like, we're getting triggered and we just want to feel understood. But the more we try to feel understood, the more we are getting escalated because the people around us don't understand. Before you know it, there's a light switch. It goes off and bam, we're in a rage episode. We're blacking out. We're not recognizing who we are. We're scaring ourselves in this moment. You know, our hearts are beating, our adrenaline's going up. We're hot, maybe, you know, pasty in the mouth kind of thing. Like, and we start either hurting ourselves or hurting our belongings or whatever it is, and before you know it, we're acting out in a way that we wish we could stop. Like, internally we're like, oh my god, stop, but our bodies are like, no, we gotta go. Once we come down from that rage, there's so much guilt, shame, embarrassment, and we tell ourselves we won't get to that point again. You know, we're gonna handle it better, differently. It never works out that way. Usually when it comes on again, it's like, it feels like we've relapsed. It's a fucking horrible feeling. And all I gotta say is, if you deal with rage, I am here for you. I understand you, and I've been there, and you can get through it. It is really hard, but I promise you, you can do it. Number 9 is stress-related paranoia ideation and severe dissociative symptoms. When I'm in like a heightened level of anxiety, I guess you would say, or stress, I definitely can get paranoid. And I'm like, paranoid people are gonna leave me, paranoid people's intentions are not pure, paranoid that they're plotting something, paranoid people are following me, paranoid there's cameras around. You know, I just get into this mindset where I'm not thinking logically, if that makes sense. Like, very, very, very irrationally. But in the moment, it makes so much sense because of how overwhelmed I am with emotion and anxiety and stress, that I'm not able to be like, no, Mick, like, you're not thinking right. Like, that's not true. That's not happening. Like, no, it feels real and it feels true in the moment. The other side is the severe dissociative symptoms. So when I dissociate, I find myself isolating a lot. I find myself unable to focus. I feel jittery, like, you know, I'm darting between thoughts and emotions and feelings, and I'm not able to stay in one place at one time, if that makes sense. When I dissociate and there are people around me, I'm not able to hold conversations. Often I'll lose my train of thought, or I won't be able to actually like focus on you. I'm not able to watch TV shows or movies because I can't follow the plot. If I am driving around, I will drive from A to B and not recognize how I got there, which lights were green, which ones were red, which lane changes I made, how long it took me to get there, or why I even went there sometimes. So dissociating can be very scary, but it also leaves me with lack of memory. So because I dissociate so much, so essentially what dissociating is your brain is going in and out of reality. It's taking breaks to prevent you from future trauma. It is essentially a trauma response that your brain subconsciously does to protect you. And so I find myself like often doing this, and it really impairs my memory because I won't be there sometimes, and then I'm there other times, and then so I have gaps in my memory of what is real, what is not, and I'm often finding myself gaslighting my own head because of that. That was the 9 characteristics. This is a really, really, really long video. Was not anticipating it to be this long. So if you guys want to comment what you guys want to see more, what do you want me to break down more, let me know. If you're wanting to know how to get diagnosed, go talk to your doctor, ask to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. From there, they can do an assessment on you. If you guys enjoyed this one, I'm not usually the type to make YouTube videos, but I only did it because I did not simply like have this much time for a TikTok video. Obviously, we know TikTok doesn't allow this long of a video. So I hope this helps. I hope it explains a bit about, you know, borderline personality disorder. It helps you to maybe seek a diagnosis that you've been longing for or needing, or you want to feel more assurance. Yeah, but I hope you guys enjoyed that. So thank you for watching.